Thank you for joining us for What to Expect When You Are Expecting, an overview of the observation process. My name is Amuda Mahendran. I am the Early Childhood Education Coordinator with Foundation First. So let's talk about why we are here. We are here because we care deeply about young children, but we also know the impact that these early years has on their developing brain and on their learning. We know that this is a critical time for children to develop those foundation that they need to develop their social, emotional, and their cognitive skills. What we also know through this data from the Virginia Kindergarten Readiness Program is that 40% of Virginia kindergartners are starting kindergarten still needing to develop skills in literacy, math, self-regulation, and social skills. They are not meeting the benchmarks that are needed for kindergartners. So what do we do with all of this information? So you may have heard some of these acronyms and these words thrown around. So let's talk about what these are and how they impact you and the work that you are doing. So on the left, you see some acronyms. Let's see if we can match them to the words on the right. So the first one, VDOE. Yes, that is correct. That is the Virginia Department of Education. That is the governing body that oversees early childhood care and education programs. Number two, VQB5. Yes, that is the Virginia Quality Birth Through 5. That is the system that we are going to be talking about, which you all are a part of, which is why you are joining us. And number three, VECF. That is correct. That is the grantor that supports the work that we are doing at Foundation First and under this Ready Region model, which I will talk about. So in 2020, the Virginia General Assembly passed legislation to ensure that all children receive quality teaching and learning experiences. So as I mentioned, early childhood care and education programs were moved over to the VDOE for oversight. And then a committee was established, the Early Childhood Advisory Committee, that oversees the work and tracks the progress of the work. And then finally, a Uniform Measurement and Improvement System was created, VQB5. So VQB5 is a measurement and improvement system that focuses on the quality of all publicly funded birth through 5 classrooms. And what we are looking at is to ensure that we are providing quality programming to children in this age group. In 2023, this became a mandated system for all publicly funded programs who serve children in that 0 to 5 age. And how do we do this work? So let's look at what VECF has created. In order to effectively implement this system, VECF created the Ready Region model to ensure that every city and county in the state of Virginia is supported with resources and services for publicly funded birth through 5 programs. As you see in front of you, there are 9 Ready Regions. We are Ready Region number 8, North Central. Each Ready Region has identified a lead agency or an organization to oversee the Ready Region work. Foundation First does that for the Ready Region North Central. Let's look at our region a little closer. In Ready Region North Central, we really wanted to be able to identify how to best support the vast differences that exist in our region. So we decided to meet your needs by dividing ourselves up into 3 areas to ensure that we have support and offices that are available for easier access to the 3 areas. By using this model, we have found that we are more effective and more supportive to our individual needs from each county and each area. So now let's look a little closer at VQB5. What does the VQB5 system do? It recognizes the impact of early childhood care and education on the whole child. And we will dive very deep into what that looks like. It gives us an opportunity to provide feedback to all educators. It gives us an opportunity as the Ready region to support system-wide improvement on supporting you as educators as well as admins. And how do we do this? We are doing this by looking at two nationally recognized quality indicators, interactions and curriculum. Curriculum is a key ingredient that helps educators improve their interactions by creating an environment where children can be safe and ready to learn. Interactions is what we're going to be mostly focusing on today. So why are we focusing on interactions? Let's look at some of the basics of child development. We know that children are learning from shared experiences with others. Their knowledge and skills are increased through these interactions. Every interaction has an impact on how children learn, how they feel about themselves, which impacts their thinking, their reasoning, and their communication. So stop for a moment and think about what positive things have you observed in the classroom. You can certainly pause this to reflect on that. Thank you for taking part in that experience. What this activity was meant to show was that you are already familiar with positive interactions and what that looks like in the classroom, whether that is from children to children or whether that is from the teacher to the children. So as we go through the rest of the presentation, keep that in mind is that you are already doing a lot of these things, if not all of them. This the system gives us an opportunity to look at it through a very focused way. The interactions that you reflected on are happening throughout the day, and they can really be put into these three categories. And these categories are words that you are probably familiar with being in the early childhood classroom. Social development, behavior classroom management, and language and cognitive development. So keep thinking about these categories because everything that we're going to talk about really fits into these categories, even though the words that we may use might be different from what you are already familiar with, but they essentially go into these three categories, which we will keep referring back to. So in measuring these interactions, the tool that we use is called the Classroom Assessment Scoring System, also called CLASS. It measures interactions in the infant classroom, as you see in the yellow. It measures interactions in the toddler classroom, as you see in the middle in the orange, and in the pre-K classroom for the 3 to 5-year-olds, as you see on the right side. So instead of focusing necessarily on what the tool is measuring, you really want to just keep thinking about what you know about teaching and what you know about children. And that will really help identify how the class tool measures this. So let's look back at those broad categories that we talked about. Again, social development is a term that we are more familiar with in the early childhood classroom. Class tool is measuring social development, but it just calls it something different. So the terms that you see in the colored boxes are called dimensions through the class tool. So in infant, there are 2 dimensions that are related to social development. In toddler, there are 4, and in pre-K, again, there are 4. These are all categories that are essentially measuring the social development that is happening in the early childhood classroom. So let's look at what this means. What do these terms actually mean, and what do they look like in the classroom? Relational climate. Relational climate is part of that social development in that infant classroom. What it's measuring, what it's looking for is, are you smiling when you are with these children? How much interest are you showing in what they're doing? Are you showing them respect by ensuring that you're letting them know that you're going to pick them up. Those are the type of things that relational climate is looking for. It's looking at how warm and supportive the classroom is and the relationship between you and the children. The next dimension in the infant classroom is teacher sensitivity. This is where it is looking at how aware and responsive you are to the children's emotional and their learning needs. So that may be how quickly you are responding to them, how you are looking at their verbal and their nonverbal cues, and then also how children are responding back to you. So now let's look at what this looks like in the toddler group. Positive climate is the first one. Again, it's looking at that warm and supportive classroom. It's also looking at that relationship between the teachers, but also you can see that it is looking at children to children, as you can see in this image. We are looking at the smiles, the eye contact, maybe some high fives. There are different ways to show positive, emotional, supportive classroom. The next dimension in the toddler tool is called negative climate. Negative climate is looking at how the classroom or how the children may be impacted by anger or irritation that may be in the classroom. And what we're looking at is to see, is this escalating? It's not that these are ever happening or not happening, but are they escalating? And then how are they impacting the interactions and the behaviors in the classroom? The third one is called teacher sensitivity. Teacher sensitivity, just like the infants, is looking at how aware and responsive you are to the children's emotional and to their learning needs. The next dimension in the toddler tool is regard for child perspectives. Here we are measuring children's interest are being recognized, and are they allowed to take the lead to follow their choices and to give them the responsibility to take care of themselves, such as hand washing. Are they able to get their own materials or even consider how somebody else might be feeling or thinking? So now let's look at the pre-K in that social development category. The first one is called positive climate. Again, it is looking at that warm and supportive classroom. The relationship between the children are being considered more now. So we start really looking at those conversations and how they're helping and supporting each other. The next one measures the negative climate. So again, similarly, we are looking at how the classroom and the children may be affected by some irritation or irritability that may be coming from the teachers or even from the children being disrespectful or angry with one another. The next dimension is teacher sensitivity, which similarly is looking at the children's academic and emotional needs being met. Are they comfortable in the classroom? Are they able to take risks and have those choices within what it is that they are doing in the classroom? How comfortable are they in approaching the teachers? The next dimension in this social development category, if you will, is the regard for student perspectives. Here, what we're looking at is there flexibility? Are children able to express themselves? Are teachers really listening to the children's ideas? Are they able to move around? All that is being measured in regard for student perspectives. So those are the dimensions that line up with that broad category of social development. So at this point, take a moment to reflect back on your own interactions with the children and take a look at this slide, regardless of if you're an infant teacher, a toddler teacher, or a pre-K teacher. Think about your own interactions. What kind of things do you do with the children as it fits into these dimensions? Thank you for taking your time to do that. Now let's go into that next category, which is behavior and classroom management. Now here, the best fit for behavior and classroom management are really in the toddler and the pre-K tool. And you see those dimensions identified here. So let's look first into that behavior guidance in the toddler tool. Behavior guidance in the toddler tool considers how well children's positive behaviors are being supported in the classroom. How are they redirected if there are any unwanted behaviors? How are they able to engage back into an activity after having a tough time? Is there too much wait time? How is that being reduced? So, those are the different types of things that are being considered for behavior guidance. Now, let's go ahead and look at the pre-K tool. The first one is called behavior management. Behavior management, similarly, is looking at how is the teacher anticipating any problems that might be coming? How are they redirecting? Are the positive behaviors being pointed out? So, for example, is the teacher asking the children to use their walking feet to redirect them instead of saying, don't run? That is a common thing that we may hear. We're also measuring students' behaviors in this category, in this dimension. How compliant are they to the classroom rules? And the next dimension is called productivity. Productivity is looking at how are the children's time being used in the classroom? Is it like a well-oiled machine? Do they know the routines of the classroom? And then if there are any transitions, for example, if you're going from circle time to going to the bathroom, is there a long wait time? And if there is, how are they being engaged during that time? Are they having opportunities to engage in some type of learning while they are waiting from one to another? Is the time in between that transition fairly short? The next dimension is called instructional learning formats. This is where you're looking at how are you getting these children engaged in whichever activity, whichever lesson, whatever goals that you might have. Are you using different ways to get them interested? Maybe you're using finger plays. Maybe you're using songs. Are you using props when you're reading a book? Are the children acting out their characters while they are reading to keep them engaged, while you are reading to keep them engaged? Are they listening? Are they paying attention? Do they understand why you are doing the activity that you are doing? Are they able to tell you the purpose of it? So these are different things that are being considered for instructional learning formats. So that is that final dimension in that behavior and classroom management category. So again, at this point, take a moment to look at these dimensions and reflect on what kind of things do you do to ensure that children are getting and staying interested in the activities? What kind of questions do you ask? What are different ways that you're ensuring that you are prepared for transitions? And what are some transition tricks that you might have between activities? Sometimes cleanup might be long. Are you ensuring that the children are staying on task? How are you doing that? How are you keeping them engaged? So take a moment right now to go ahead and reflect on some of your own practices. Thank you for taking your time to do that. Now let's move into that third category of child development, which is language and cognitive development. And you see that the infants are back in here in the two dimensions called facilitated exploration and early language support. In toddler, we can look at language and cognitive development through these dimensions called facilitation of learning and development, quality of feedback, language modeling. In the pre-K, we can look at language and cognitive development through these dimensions: concept development, quality of feedback, and language modeling. Again, just to reemphasize, the class terms are new terms to us. Those dimensions are something different from what we are used to hearing, but we know that they all fit into this language and cognitive development category. So let's look at it a little bit closer. For the infant, facilitated exploration, what does that mean? That means we are looking at, that the educators are looking at how to engage them with their activities, right? Even during routine care, meaning even during diaper changing time. How are you keeping the children engaged? How are you enhancing their experience? How are you getting involved? So if a child is, trying to hold their own bottle, how are you supporting that? If a child is learning to crawl, How are you helping them through that? How can you challenge them to go a little further next time? If they are maybe learning to walk, are you giving them your hand in the beginning and then maybe slowly switching to just one finger so they can start pushing themselves to doing it on their own? How are you adjusting that experience for them is what we are looking at. The next dimension is called early language support. Early language support is looking at how you're supporting the children's language by giving them language and getting them to use the language that they already have. Are you describing what it is that you're doing? Are you narrating your actions? For example, I'm going to get that bottle for you right now. I'm going to change your diaper before I come over to you. So those are great ways for you to label your own actions and labeling the children's actions. In language modeling, it's also being measured how you are imitating the sounds that they are making. You are repeating the new words that they are learning, and you are adding on. You're also giving them a chance to respond. You're pausing and waiting for them to respond. And then when they do respond, you respond back with more words. And then they reply back to you, and you keep going back and forth. Doing this really helps them gain that language and gain that confidence in developing that language. So now let's move on over to the toddler. The first dimension is called facilitation of learning and development. What that means is how are you facilitating? How are you helping them with that experience? How are you supporting their learning opportunities? What are some ways that you are looking at to engage the children, helping them really being actively involved in an activity that may be new to them? How are you intentionally helping them gain the ideas and maybe deepen some of those concepts and ideas? You are really promoting those explorations for what it is that they are interested in. You are helping them and encouraging them think about it even further. The next dimension is called quality of feedback. What this means is that now you are listening to what it is that the children are doing. You are watching what it is that they are doing, and then you are responding back. So, whatever it is that they are curious about, you may ask them questions about it. And then you go back and forth with them. Maybe if the children are learning to put their jacket on, you can give them some suggestions. Maybe you can put your arm through the first one and then the second. So you're really helping them walk through that process, helping them understand the different experiences and helping them learn those different activities. You are giving them very specific feedback here. We are hearing things like, I see that you are using your words to tell him how you feel. I see that you put your shoes on all by yourself. So, those are great ways to really help the children encourage that behavior so they keep doing it and they want to do it more and they want to do it even better next time. The next dimension in the toddler tool is called language modeling. And similar to the infant tool, language modeling is really looking at what kind of language that you are using. Are you having those conversations with the children? Are you repeating what they are saying and adding on to them? Children might mention a word when they're eating, they may say peas, and you say, oh, you are eating some green peas right now. And you may talk about how it might taste, and you can keep going on about that experience by giving them those rich vocabulary. You are also similar to the infant tool, encouraging that language by giving them those back and forth opportunities, right? Now you are starting to ask those open-ended questions. You're also repeating what children are saying. You're adding on to what it is that they may be asking about or curious about. And now let's look at language and cognitive development and what it looks like in the pre-K class. The first dimension is called concept development. Concept development is really measuring how are you encouraging the children to think on the next level. What kind of questions are you asking to help them analyze and reason through things? How are they problem solving, using brainstorming, coming up with ideas? You are making things relevant for them by connecting these concepts and helping them make sense of it. So in this image, you may say, I see a blue ring here that matches your shirt, and that is also blue. So that's a great way to help the children make those connections and understand the concept of colors, which you may be working on. The next dimension in the pre-K tool is quality of feedback. Similarly to what we talked about in the toddler tool, is how are you building upon their previous knowledge? How are you helping them understand a concept by really having that back and forth exchange with them? So the child asks you a question and then you provide some information and then you go back and forth until something, that is really solidified for that child. We are seeing teachers helping children be very persistent in what it is that they might be working on, right? So maybe a 50-piece puzzle that the child is working on. How are you really encouraging that child to first, help them figure it out without giving them the answer? And then how are you really encouraging them by, those very specific feedbacks that you might give of, oh, you found another corner piece, or you found a piece that matched with that, by giving them very specific feedback that makes the children want to do it more. The last dimension in the pre-K tool is called language modeling. Same wording. Here's where we really want to hear those frequent conversations. We're also looking for conversations between the children if they are at an appropriate age or appropriate level where they are able to have those type of interactions where they are communicating with each other. We are looking at advanced language. You're giving them a new word, but you're also defining that new word so children are able to really start using those words and understanding what it means. Those are the things that are being measured in that language modeling. So now that we have gone through that final category of language and cognitive development, let's take a moment here to again reflect on what are those things that you are doing. What kind of things have you already, said to the children to encourage their thinking, to help them learn? How are you helping them develop language? How are you helping them, really deepen their understanding of using that language? Thank you for taking your time to do those reflective experiences. This really helps us understand what the tool is looking for when it's measuring these effective interactions, but also making us more aware of our own teaching practices. When you're doing these reflections, reflect on, are you doing it with intentionality? Are you doing it just once, or are you doing it consistently throughout the day? Are you ensuring that all children in your classroom are getting these experiences and getting these type of interactions from you is what we are looking for. That is the goal of these class observations, is to provide you the opportunity to be observed and then to get some feedback on these observations so you can reflect upon your own practices and make the adjustments that you feel that you want to do. So let's look at what a typical day or a typical observation looks like. The observer comes in, they introduce themselves to you, letting them know that they are here and what they're going to be doing. They may find a spot in the classroom where they can be least disruptive as possible to the children and to you. They're going to be taking those objective notes, meaning they're going to be looking at and listening to the interactions in the classroom and writing it down according to those categories, those dimensions that we talked about. They're going to be doing this for 4 cycles. Each cycle is 15 or 20 minutes. In the infant classroom, it is 15 minutes. In the toddler and pre-K classroom, it is 20 minutes. And once they are done with that cycle, they will either go outside or take 10 minutes approximately to code or to score that cycle. And then they will do it again until they complete 4 cycles. So they are going to be looking for good sampling of your classroom. They might observe a meal time, a circle time, or center time to ensure that they are able to give you feedback on your teaching on all different aspects of the day. They are going to be observing all of the educators who are working with children for a significant amount of time. Therapists or anybody that might be coming in for specials are not considered for observation. We can certainly give you more details about this if you reach out to us after watching this recording. Observations happen 2 times during the year, once in the fall, what we call window, and again in the spring for a second window. You will be observed at least 2 times in the VQB5 system. The details of the observations and scheduling are things that we can certainly give you more information about as you reach out to us. Observers take the information from the observation and then they score it based on how often things might be happening. Scoring in the class tool is a 1 to 7 scale, 1 being on the low end and high, and 7 being on the high end. So, what the observer is looking for is how often a behavior or an interaction is happening in the classroom. And then they base the scores on the evidence and assign it these numbers or ranges as you see in front of you. So, what happens after the class observation? Educators will receive feedback based on their observation. Feedback is given both in a feedback session with a verbal conversation with the observer and also in a form such as the one that you see here. Concrete examples of the observation from that day are shared on this form. And in the session, the observer will also share areas for growth for opportunities for what effective interactions look like as measured by the class tool. The observer will schedule a feedback session with you, preferably on the same day of the observation, but if not, by 10 days within the day of the observation. Based on observation results, quality improvement plans may be something that is offered that focuses on improving the quality of interactions in your classroom. We also have resources that we offer for educators to work on independently or as groups or cohorts. Those are things that we are going to be providing and we'll share with you information as we have them available. Once the observation is complete, scores are entered into Link B5, which is the state's data portal. All of you have already had an opportunity to input your information into Link B5. This is a place where we are able to capture all of this data to understand the early childhood care and education landscape, and it helps us understand what type of resources we still need to best support your classrooms and you as educators. All of the information is then compiled and presented to the public and celebrated through the quality profiles that are now available for all families to access information when they are looking for quality programs for their children, including yours. Thank you for participating in this recording and the self-reflection activities that you took your time to participate in. It is always very important to reflect upon our practices to ensure that we are aware of what it is that we are doing and the impact that we have on the children. My name is Amuda Mahendran, ECE coordinator. You can reach me at the email that is listed on your screen. Thank you.